Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome to the video, and today is my UFC 231 takeaways. I did a WrestleMania takeaway for the WWE. Now I want to do a UFC pay-per-view. I want to discuss my thoughts on the fights. I'm only going to be talking about the co-main event and the main event. I'm not going to talk about the event as a whole because then this video is going to be way too long. So here are my takeaways from the co-main event and the main event. So the first fight I want to talk about is Valentina Shevchenko versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. This was a very, very interesting fight. Now, if you follow me on social media, you know I picked Valentina very early in this week. My biggest takeaway from this fight was Valentina was the more complete fighter. Her wrestling was a lot better than Jędrzejczyk's. And in that first round, when Valentina, she got the early takedown, and late in the first round, she caught Jędrzejczyk's spinning leg kick. And you can tell that after that, Jędrzejczyk was shook and very reluctant to be aggressive. And Jędrzejczyk, typically, when she wins fights, is a very aggressive fighter. She comes at you, throws punches, and hits you with the leg kicks. But you can tell that Shevchenko's wrestling ability was in the back of her mind, which made her very timid. And you can't win in the UFC being timid. Valentina was very calculated with all her shots. Valentina Shevchenko never had to be the aggressor in this fight. She let the fight come to her, and all her shots were very calculated and on point. She didn't waste any shots, which was very, very impressive. Now, as the fight progressed, Valentina was getting drained. You could tell she was drained. And Jędrzejczyk was dodging the takedowns. And every time Jędrzejczyk dodged a takedown, I was screaming at my computer, be aggressive, charge, she's tired, hit her with a few big punches. And she just never did. Later in the fight, the coach was, in the fifth round, the coach was saying, close the gap, hit her with some speed shots, she's tired, you got her. But Jędrzejczyk just wasn't aggressive enough. It wasn't until late in the fifth round where she started hitting a lot of fast, quick shots. But it was just too little, too late. I was really hoping that this fight would have been decided by either knockout or takedown. I'm kind of bitter that it ended by judges' decision, although I definitely think the judges got it right. I think Jędrzejczyk has to work on her wrestling if she plans on staying in the 125 weight class. I don't think she's going to be able to fight in the higher weight class just relying on her striking ability. And I definitely think Shevchenko's wrestling ability exposed Jędrzejczyk. I definitely think young J-Trick got exposed. And I definitely think if she wants to stay in that 125-pound weight class, she needs to work on her wrestling. Now, let's talk about the weight. Where they had to go to get to this point, to get to this fight. Young J-Trick had to move up from 115 to 125 to make weight, and Shevchenko had to move down from 130 to 125 to meet for this belt. And a lot of people were saying that young J-Trick had an advantage because she didn't have to cut weight. She had to gain weight. And Shevchenko had a disadvantage because she had to cut weight to make 125. But I do want to say that moving up in weight is not always better. Because sometimes when you move up in weight and you put on muscle, the more muscle you have, the more oxygen your body has to use. And so if you're not used to fighting at a higher weight, it can be very taxing on the muscle. So to say that young J-Trick had a clear advantage, I don't know. Moving up is hard too, because you have to get used to fighting with more muscle, which means more energy expenditure. So that was my takeaway for this fight. It was a great fight. I hate that it ended it by a judge's decision, but the judges definitely got it right. I would like to see young J-Trick fight in 125 one more time. And maybe if she loses a second time, then she can move back down to 115. But I definitely think young J-Trick, if she works on her wrestling, she could be really good at 125. Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega. What a great main event this was. We got treated with two really good fights in this card. The main event and the co-main event, two really impressive fights. If you went out and watched this, if you paid for it and had people come over, I would be completely happy with these two fights. I didn't pay for it. I go out and watch it. But this is one of the very rare pay-per-views where it's like, if you paid $60 for it, I wouldn't be so mad. $30 for those last two fights on their own make the $60 worth it. So let's just get into the analysis of Ortega versus Holloway. This was a very impressive match. Very early on, Ortega tried to get Holloway on the ground. And Holloway's takedown defense was some of the most impressive things I have ever seen, just in sports in general. Every time Ortega shot at Holloway blocked it, and with such great speed and precision. Holloway did not want this fight to go onto the ground, and he did not let it. It was so impressive seeing his takedown defense, just how quick and how smooth it was. Ortega wanted so badly to get that on the ground, and he just couldn't get it. That was the biggest difference in this fight, where these fights were the exact opposite. Because where young J-Trick wasn't ready for the wrestling, Holloway was. And because of that, he won. And you never really saw Holloway shoot at Ortega. Holloway did not want to make this a wrestling match, but he knew Ortega was going to try to make it a wrestling match, and you could tell that they prepared his takedown defense. That team was ready for Ortega to shoot at the hip and try to get the takedown. And Ortega said, nope, not today. If you're going to beat me, you're going to beat me with your striking, which Ortega could not do. Very impressive takedown defense by Holloway. Very, very impressive. Now, I'm not a UFC fan. Well, no. Let me scale that back. I am a very casual UFC fan. So maybe there is stuff there as a casual UFC fan I did not see. So leave your comments in the comment section down below if you are a more crazy UFC fan. I like the UFC, but on a very casual level. I don't fully understand it like a true UFC fan would, but just as a sports fan, this was my analysis. So feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. We got treated to 2 great matches. So happy I got to watch it. And let me know what you think. Now I just wanted to talk about just betting the UFC in general. I do not bet. I don't gamble. But I do pick the fights. Picking the fights definitely makes it more interesting. I picked Khabib versus Conor. I picked Khabib to win, and Khabib won. I picked Cormier versus Lewis. Cormier won. I picked Shevchenko versus Young Jacek. Shevchenko won. And I picked Holloway versus Ortega, and Holloway won. 4 for 4 with my UFC picks. My advice, if you're going to gamble on the UFC, gamble on the most complete fighters. Gamble on the ones that know how to wrestle, gamble and know how to strike. The most balanced fighters win the matches. I know this is a very small sample size, only 4, but that is my greatest takeaway from the UFC this year. The balanced fighters, the ones who know how to wrestle, will come away with the victory. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.